from the three modes of. So whether we want or not, inaction is also an action. Like someone may say that I'm not going to do anything today, I'm just going to sleep in my bed. So although they may think that they're not making any action, but the action of sleeping itself is an action. So so due to the modes of material nature, we're always acting under one of the modes. And Srila Prabhupada in the Bhagavad also mentions that even a renunciate must act. People think that we can become a sannyasi or a Babaji and then we can just give up our actions in the material world. But even a renunciate has to go to preach. He has to, beg for food, look for shelter. So in that way, a renunciate also has to act for the Lord. But a renunciate acts for the Lord, and the other people who are not in Krishna consciousness or are very engaged with the material world, they act for the material senses or some material relationships or any material connections they have. So even a person who has no material need to work still must do something. Why? Because the activity is the nature of the soul, and we are all driven by the three modes of material nature. So instead of pretending to stop, Krishna recommends we act, but spiritually. Krishna has repeated this concept of devotional service throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada uh, gives more insight on this in the puppets, which I really want to read, but I'm quite restricted on time here. So the only way to give up karma or any sort of reaction from any action is to engage it in Krishna service, or to engage it spiritually. So the best way is to serve, offer whatever skills you have, whatever resources you have. You do your duty, but you do your duty with devotion. And that's karma yoga. So we'll move on to the next text. Karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudatma mityachara sauchyate. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. They may seem quite heavy words from Krishna, but Krishna is explaining how hypocrisy um, happens in the material world. Hypocrisy, what's hypocrisy? Hypocrisy is just simply to accept uh, to accept prestige and privilege, but without any responsibility or sacrifice that comes with that position. That's hypocrisy. Now, this hypocrisy can happen at any level. It could happen at the level of politicians or at the level of your personal relationships, or you see people all around the world trying to externally portray themselves as something else, but internally their mind is dwelling on certain sense objects or is in a completely different direction. One who restrains the senses of action but whose mind dwells on sense objects. Ya ste manasa smaran karmendriyani samyamya. So our karmendriyani are the reason why we are bonded in this material world. But samyamya, if you're able to control these working sense organs, then we can get out of this material world. But until then, if we keep pretending to be someone who we are not, we will always be tagged as mityachara sauchyate, will always be called a pretender. So even as devotees, we try to follow the four regulative principles, and sometimes certain thoughts may come into our mind, and so someone may wonder that does that mean that I'm a mithyachara just because certain thoughts have crossed my mind. So the way the karmendryani work is that a lot of thoughts will come into our mind. It is said that on an average, about 70,000 thoughts come into a human's brain every single day. Now, there's so much influx of thoughts that it could be good thoughts, it could be bad thoughts. And these influx of thoughts cannot be stopped. But what you can choose to do is you can choose which thoughts to act upon and which thoughts to not act upon. That is in our control. So say if a non-conducive thought comes to your mind, that's okay. That happens to everyone at every level. Even yogis who've been practicing for 50, 60 years, these thoughts come in their mind. But what's the difference between them and us is that we act on those thoughts. And they, ones who are expert in controlling their senses, they act, they don't act on their thoughts, on the bad thoughts that come to their mind. So everything is dependent on what we choose to do with our thoughts. And that then engages the karmendryani with the sense objects around us. Okay. Yes, so renunciation is internal. It's not just something that's external. That's what the Purport was pointing out. So Krishna is concluding in this verse that controlling the body is not enough. The mind also has to be purified. And real spiritual life means engaging the mind. That's why we practice something called the mantra meditation. You must have heard Ramasima Prabhu talk about chanting all the time. Mantra comes from two words, man and trayate. Man means mind, trayate means to connect. So when you connect the mind to something beyond material, that is actually mantra yoga, and it's one of the best types of yoga practices. So we have to engage the mind and the senses in service and not just artificially try to repress our mind. Okay, we'll move on to the next verse. Yastva Vindriyani Manasa Niyamyarbhate Arjuna Karmendriyai Karma Yogam Asakta Sa Vishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Asakta sa vishishyate karmendriye karma yogam. So Krishna is saying, Krishna is basically contrasting renunciation and engagement in this verse. As I was explaining earlier, that the reason for our bondage in this material world is karmendriya, you know. So so let's say, for example, that you may be externally agitated by something. So all of these sense objects are like an attraction for all of us. Now they are in their natural form. That's just how they are. But then to be agitated by those or not is our choice. And that's how the karmendriya karma yogam asakta savishishyate, we can practically apply this in our lives. There's an example of this brahmachari who is in saffron robes, so externally he's a yogi, he's a brahmachari, he's a renunciant. But internally, he is meditating on something. It could be anything. Let's say he's attracted to sweets. He's attracted to sweets in his mind. Now, because of his past karma, his past deeds, his past engagement, his past samskaras, the attachment to sweets may be very natural in his mind. But if he cultivates those thoughts on the other hand that, oh, I want to keep eating sweets, I want to keep eating sweets, sweets bring me pleasure, this and that and whatnot. If he keeps on cultivating that thought, that is wrong. That is what Krishna is pointing out. That all of this, uh, the the engagement of the senses, the engagement of the mind, it has to happen with some detachment. A lot of people say that it'll be better for us to go and meditate in the forest. Actually, that's what happened just before chapter 3. Arjuna, sorry, in the beginning of chapter 3, Arjuna tells Krishna that if you think that renunciation is better, then let me just go to the forest and let me just meditate and just get perfection and just go back to Godhead. So then, in response to that question, that query, Krishna is answering all of these verses, saying that, even though you may go away, let's say you go away to a forest, you know, and you think that you won't be disturbed by any of these externals around you, which is true to some extent because out of sight, out of mind. But in some cases, if something is not around you, it may be on your mind even more. You may take a phone with you, or you take something with you, and then you just keep checking your phone in a place where you're not supposed to check your phone. People go to the temples, and even there they're taking phone calls, they're just so out of mind that they are not present where they should be present. So there needs to be some sort of detachment in our actions, in whatever we do, in order to control our senses. So action in devotion purifies and uplifts. Work for Krishna, not for selfish goals. So a real devotee is not the one who sits quietly, but the one who uses body, mind, and senses in devotional service without attachment to results. What this could mean for you or for me could be very different. The way you would like to use or engage your body and mind could look very different from how I would like to do it or how someone else may like to do it. But everyone should, on a level, should try to engage their body, mind, and senses in some sort of service to the Lord. That's what Krishna is recommending, to control the senses. Because to control the senses, to control the mind, is not very easy. You'll see further on in the Gita that Arjuna says to Krishna that I can control the wind, but I can't control the mind. And who can control the wind? So controlling the mind is really, really difficult. That's why Krishna recommends that the way to control the mind is to engage it in devotional service. If you engage your mind in devotional service, service to Krishna, whatever little it is, it'll become easier for you to start controlling the mind. Okay, text date. Nityatam kuru karma tvam karma jyayo ya karmana sharira yatra apichate na prasiddhyeda karmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Sharira yatra pichate. So this sharira, this body, is on a journey. Na prasiddhyeta karmana. So one should, Krishna is recommending that whatever you're doing, you should do your duty. You shouldn't refrain from doing your duty. If you have a job, you should continue doing that job. But what you can do is you can offer the results of your action, for example, say your job, to Krishna in order to purify that. So in this verse, Krishna is pointing out that inaction is never recommended. We must do a prescribed duty. Prescribed duties could range from different varnas and different ashramas. So we have the concept of varnashrama and va varna and ashrama. So varna is related to the duties of the body, and the ashrama is related to the duties of the soul. So different varnas have different duties. Say varnas are brahmanas, kshatriya, vaishyas, or shudras. Brahmanas are like the advisories, kshatriyas are like managers, Vaishyas are like the business class, and the Shudras are the working class. So all of these classes, they have certain duties, certain prescribed duty. Now, if you're acting within your Varna, um, that's recommended. That is recommended by the Lord. That whatever you do, you keep doing it within your Varna, but you do it without attachment to the result as a service to Krishna. Work is better than inaction. Even to maintain the body, one must work. Even to maintain this body, we gotta eat, we gotta drink water, we gotta exercise a little bit. So you cannot be inactive in this material world, and there has to be some sort of action. Yajnathat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. Um, so, this is the first reference Krishna makes to the concept of yajna. You must have heard the yajna before. Yajna can be classified in two different ways. Yajna can look like a form, but yajna is also a principle. So yajna in a form looks like, you must have seen these sacrifices where they take ghee and they put that ghee in the yajna, and they do like a whole havan, that's what they call in Hindi in India. So that's a form of yajna. But there's also a principle behind yajna. The principle is sacrifice. So whatever ghee, whatever fruits or you're offering in the yajna, the principle is that you're sacrificing that. You could have eaten that, you could have, consumed all of that ghee or like consumed all of that fruit you wanted, but you're making that sacrifice. You're making that sacrifice to Vishnu. So the work done as sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. The purpose of yajna is that it purifies work and consciousness. The purpose of yajna is that it leads you to akarma. So there are three kinds of karma. First is karma, which brings you good reaction. Then second is vikarma, that brings you bad reaction. And third is akarma, that brings you no reaction. So if the way you work, the way you function in the material world is is doing it as a sacrifice for Vishnu, then that brings you akarma, then that brings you no reaction to your work at all. So if you have the intention or mentality that, when you log into work in the morning, or when if you're studying, if you're university, just before you start all of that, you say that, you know what, Krishna, please inspire me today to give my best, and all of that I'm about to do today is for you. And then when you finish work, you have the same meditation that, oh Krishna, please accept whatever I've done today. And I offer all of previous 8 hours work unto you, unto your lotus feet. If you have this mentality, if you always keep Krishna in the center of your work, then you can purify your work and your consciousness. That's what Krishna's pointing out in this verse. The main yagya, obviously, I'm sure Prabhupada points out in the Papa that the main yagya for this day and age is the chanting of Krishna's name. So every yuga, Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga, they have a particular yagya. So in Satyuga, the yagya was to do, can't remember actually, but in different yugas, they have different yagyas to be performed in. But for our age, the yagya is Sankirtan yagya, is to perform the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. That's the recommended yagya because the way the yagyas are recommended in Rig Veda or all yeah in Rig Veda, Krishna Yajurveda and whatnot, is that it's too lavish. We can't afford to do those yagyas how it's actually supposed to be done. The way we do yagyas in Kali Yuga is very symbolic, you know. What's recommended in the Shastra might be like 5 kgs of gold, 10 kgs of silver, and whatnot. But in today's yagya, we have a little coin as a symbolic representation of what is actually supposed to be. So we're actually not doing the yagya how they're supposed to be. But the only yagya that can be done in its absolute form is the Sankirtan yagya, and that's chanting of Krishna's name. And that will be complete in itself for this age of Kali. Yes, so work done without Krishna in the center binds us more tightly to material anxiety, ego, and rebirth. Hmm. Okay. So we'll move on to the last verse. We'll quickly try to finish on time. Sahayagya praja srishtva purovacha prajapati anena prasvishyadvam eshavostva ishtakamaduk. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, Be thou happy by this yajna sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So, we just spoke about how everyone should do yajna. In this verse, Krishna tells us about an example of how Lord Brahma did a yajna. And what was his yajna? He created men and demigods. That was his yajna. So Lord Brahma gave sacrifice with creation, and human prosperity comes from yajna. You read further on in the Gita how yajna brings rains help with the growth of the grains, and then if we have grains, then we can live and survive. So it's like a whole cycle. I won't get into it right now, but performance of yajna it helps with humans' prosperity. And as I spoke earlier in Kali Yuga, the Sankirtan yajna, chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is the best. So I think we've got 10 minutes left in our meeting, so I'll end here. If you have any questions, queries, corrections.
Yes, if anyone has any question, you can ask here. Very nicely explained. Okay, so I think very nicely explained, so no questions. Yeah. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Advaita Bro. Very kind of him to agree and to join us and guide us with this special explanation. Very nicely presented.
Yeah, if you don't have any questions, then maybe you can do like a quick reflection then. This is just something for you to reflect maybe this weekend and maybe you can apply next week. That first is to think that can you really spiritualize your work? If there's any way you can spiritualize your work, it could be anything depending on your job, how your job is. Maybe you'd like to offer a portion of your salary in some charitable work, some spiritual work, maybe help ISKCON-Bristol in some way, shape, or form. We have Janmashtami coming up in 2 weeks. So is there any way you can spiritualize a part of your work or any results from your work? Second is to think that can I offer at least one thing to Krishna daily? Now, this offering could be anything from simply just paying obeisances to a deity or a picture of Krishna you have, or anyone you worship. Is there anything you can offer? It could be water, fruit. It could be anything nice you want to make. Is a weekend, so you probably have more time to cook. And third, if you're really struggling, you just start small. You can chant, you can read. We have Vedabase, which is free. You can just go online, vedabase.com, and then you can read about Krishna and his pastimes. Or you can offer food, if you like cooking and whatnot. Anything little. Krishna, all of these offerings are external. They're just an object. They're just a medium actually for our love to go towards Krishna. So yes, please reflect this weekend if you want to. But yes, thank you so much. It was lovely being with you all and sharing something I could. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for. So yeah, if anyone has um, anything to say, if not, then yeah, we'll end here. So we'll end with the prayers with all the Vaishnavas and thanking them. वाचा कल्पतरुश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च कृष्णां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Thank you everyone for joining. Next week, again, we'll be starting the same. Hare Krishna.